All right, Alex, we are live. Thank you so much for taking out some time, my man.
Thank you. Thanks for having me again.
Definitely, absolutely. So let's talk about the YouTube effect, right? Um,
Yep.
what was your first experience with YouTube that kind of made you want to make this documentary?
A couple of things. One is old. One is the fact that I came up online in the '80s, so I watched the whole thing go from pre web internet to the web to giant stuff like Napster happening in the late '90s. We were all trying to get video online. It was very difficult. It looked terrible. I work in film, so we were often sending video around to each other for post production, visual effects, things like that. Looked like crap. Usually, what wins in on the online is what has the easiest user interface, right? That's why Apple won that race, and suddenly with YouTube, video worked for the first time. It was just easy, and that revolutionized the internet. So, I think in general, I've always been kind of tracking the growth of really big online communities from, pre-web to Napster to this, and that's what made me want to make the movie. I was working. Gail Ann Hurd approached me and asked me if I wanted to collaborate on this with her, and I'd been looking at the rise of YouTube for a long time, and the fact that it had grown to become by far the biggest media platform on the planet, and that really felt worthy of examination.
Sure. Yeah, man, for sure. I mean, the movie itself, it has a very important message that's both like inspirational and like cautionary too. You know what I mean? So, what did you kind of hope to achieve with the film? What was your
I think I
goal?
wanted to. I mean, first and foremost, I'm interested in telling a good, juicy story, right?
Sure.
I mean, I'm a filmmaker at the end of the day, so I want to create a story that has a very emotionally impactful quality and is entertaining. So I was focused on really putting human faces to these ideas. So it's less about information and more about the people involved and who are they and what are their lives and how are they caught up in the wheels of this, both positively and negatively. So
Sure.
I think that's really what I wanted to do, is put a human face on what can be a very complicated and confusing topic. The internet is a vast topic. YouTube and Google, there's nothing bigger than either of those two things, and they're both one company at the end of the day.
Yeah.
So I think more than anything, I wanted to humanize this story. And then, as you said, there is a cautionary component as well. There's this idea of like, when is all the power too much power?
Sure.
Um, and I really wanted to look at that as well.
That's wild, man. So now, you've written and directed a few other documentaries. How do you feel that this one kind of stands out for you personally?
I think that this one is very much about the world we're in this second.
Mm,
A lot of times I'm looking at things that are either really under the surface, like we did with Deep Web, that most people don't even know about, or
sure.
maybe they're retrospective, like Zappa, or downloaded, both of which were about things that had happened decades before. I think this is probably the first time I've made a movie that is really absolutely about the landscape we're in right now, both from a technological and a political viewpoint, especially coming out of COVID and just the sheer insanity that was 2020. I
Sure.
think the movie, more than anything, is really about what got us to that crazy place and what technology's role was in that. So I think that's where it fits in the landscape. It's not something I've really done before, and it was actually quite stressful to make because it was a very stressful year. And we made the movie clean through COVID, clean through the craziness of the political scene that year, and it was kind of nutso. But I'm glad we got to do it.
That's wild, man. And so, you've done a lot of film work, right? A lot of films over your years. And what do you enjoy most about working like in the documentary world? Because you've had like you mentioned, Downloaded, which was great. You've
Oh,
done some
thanks.
really solid films over the last couple of years.
I like telling stories with real people. I still do a lot of narrative work, and I spend a lot of time writing narrative scripts, and I enjoy that as well. It's a very different discipline. I love acting still, and I'll jump in and act again when it's worth the time.
Blues Clues.
Yeah, that was actually super fun. That was only a day. It was really a cameo that got kind of stretched out. But
I love it.
going back to do Bill and Ted 3, jumping in to do a cameo that's fun like that. Um, but for me, I really do like crafting story out of real people's lives with those people. There's really nothing more fascinating and more complicated than an actual human being, and playing around in that world is very gratifying. And I really enjoy those stories. I enjoy telling stories about real people because they're interesting and they're surprising.
Sure. Oh, I love it, man. So, going back to like your first directorial debut, you got Freaked, right? I'm pretty sure in 93. How do you feel that you've kind of changed as a director since then?
Well, in some ways a lot, in other ways not at all. I mean,
That's
there's a
cool.
SAG strike on, so I can't talk about new acting projects, but
No, of
I've
course
sort
not.
of I've jumped into some other stuff that's similar in tone to the really crazy Gonzo comedy stuff that I've done in the past. Obviously, Bill and Ted 3 had a lot of that Gonzo comedy in it, and a lot of the same prosthetics artists came back and worked on that. Some of whom had worked on Freak, like Bill Corso. So I think that there's a part of me that still likes to play those notes, as it were. I mean, I kind of look at it like a character actor or a musician. I like jumping between genres. I like investing myself in whatever the tone is of the genre that I'm working on. If it's really crazy, then I'm going to go all the way crazy. If it's very serious, I'm going to get pretty serious. So I think in that way, all of those colors are still there. But I do think as a director, I've focused much more on kind of cutting edge topical stories. That's really what interests me, I would say, the most. And I'm really grateful I've been able to stay in that zone for a while.
I love it, man. All right, so last one I got for you is, I guess what are your plans for your next directing project? I mean, I'm very curious to hear if you can give us a sneak or something.
Well, I mean, I'm working on several projects right now, and because of the strike, I'm mostly working on trying to get through the strike and helping other people who are hurting during the strike. I'm part of a union solidarity coalition. We've been raising money for union members who are losing their health care because of the work shutdown brought on by the studios. So it's a very serious time in our industry right now, and it's kind of all hands on deck.
Sure.
Um, so I've been doing a lot of fundraising and a lot of picketing.
Sure,
Um,
sure.
Otherwise, I'm in development on a feature film that I'm hoping to shoot next year, and another doc, and some other acting stuff is coming out that I'm not allowed to talk about. So, but
No, it's
that's
cool,
actually
man.
that's very exciting stuff, and I'm sure you and I will be chatting about that when it comes out next year.
Brilliant. That's awesome, Alex. Listen, man, I really appreciate the time. It's been a real pleasure, and hopefully, like you said, we'll chat again soon.
Great.
All
Thanks,
right,
Mike.
man.
Always good
Thanks.
to chat.